Hello, my name is Chelb. My pronouns are they, them. I am a tarot reader and a witch and an avid Sims player. Like many people in their 30s, I've been playing The Sims for, ever since it came out, so 20 plus years. And ever since beginning to practice witchcraft and becoming an adult, I have used The Sims 4 to manifest every single one of my new apartments or my moves that I've needed throughout my adulthood. Usually when I've done this, I've been on a timeline, I've known exactly where I'm going and when I need a house by. So I've always kind of played it small. I've made just what I need, an apartment with the exact right amount of bedrooms, nothing too big, nothing too fancy, keeping it within realism. But I've been in my current apartment for a few years now, which is the longest I've ever been in any one place. And my partner and I know we want to move into a house, finally, at some point in the next year or so. So I sat down to start my manifestation process with The Sims 4, and I was getting ready to just play it safe again, do something realistic, not try to attract anything beyond what I believe are my means now. But the difference this time is that there isn't really a set timeline. I don't need housing by a specific date. I don't need it to be in any necessary location within our current city. And the possibilities for what my life could look like in the next year are kind of open and endless. So I wanted to bring you along with me as I begin the manifestation process for maybe not my dream house, but pretty dang close. There's a couple different ways you could use The Sims to manifest, one of which is just building the dream house, moving yourself in, and living your dream life in The Sims. But what I like to do is build my current living situation and set up my life as close as possible as to what it is now, and then actually have my sim do the work of getting the next thing as I also do it in real life. Of course, timelines in The Sims move a lot faster, so you can play through an entire year in The Sims in, a day if you're dedicated. So today, what we are doing is building my current apartment in The Sims. So let's get into the build, and I will tell you a little bit more about my process. So in real life, I work a full-time job and I also own a small business doing tarot readings, teaching witchcraft classes, all online. So in order to make this as close as possible to real life, I did go back and forth on whether or not I wanted to build my entire apartment building and then purchase a small business lot separately from the house, or how I wanted to go about this. So what I ended up doing was just building my apartment in the exact layout as much as I could, and then having a little off building where I set up a small business just to teach mediumship and thanatology classes, which is pretty much as close as we can get to witchcraft and tarot reading. But since I have life and death, I can also do tarot readings for customers when they come in. It's just not quite the same thing. So what we're really doing is just kind of decorating my apartment. The outside of the building, I didn't try very hard with. I just wanted to get the layout of my apartment as close to reality as possible, but the outside, the building, looks pretty ugly, pretty terrible. So we're not too worried about that at the moment. So what you've already seen me do is get my kitchen pretty much sorted. I have a really awful kitchen with virtually no counter space, which is very much reflected in this build. And I mostly was just trying to get it visually, again, to look as lifelike as possible. So I got these file cabinets that I believe are from Life and Death to represent these little half-wall built-in situations I have at the edge of my kitchen. I used one of the full-length wall cabinets to make this pantry situation that it does disappear in live mode when you're in half wall mode, which is kind of annoying, but whatever, we'll deal with it. And then I have a bunch of open shelving above my one countertop. The other thing that was honestly pretty difficult about doing this is that I really wanted to use nice appliances, nice decor, just all the things that I would normally do when I play The Sims, which is make my Sims wealthy and never want for anything. But since I am making this as close to possible as real life, I used kind of the lower quality stuff, especially the wall paint and the floors. I have the really crappy linoleum from For Rent in my kitchen. I also have the wall paint that I actually think this wall paint is from For Rent too. It's a little dingy, it's a little gray, it's a little gross because I live in a decent apartment building, but it is still an apartment building built in the 1920s that has received the landlord special time and time again. I do adjust this area of the kitchen a few times. The art that I'm putting up is very much intended to be like real life. I do have a painting of a Highland cow next to my stove. I actually have a broom hanging above my kitchen sink. I'm realizing now that I could have gone into Realm of Magic Debug and gotten a broom and sized it down, but that's fine. I just went for some herbs instead. Getting everything to sit just right in this dining room situation was a little difficult, and I kind of go back and adjust it a few different times, especially because I shrink the building a couple of times and all of my alt-placed clutter kind of shifted when that happened. But right here, these built-in cabinets I did by just taking a hutch and alt-placing it into a diagonal wall because we have some wood built-in cabinets. I tried to figure out a way to put something on the wall behind the clutter that I alt-placed in there to make it look less like a cabinet shoved into a wall, but it just wasn't working, so I left it as is. I'm putting empty frames here because above a little buffet that we have in our dining room, we have a bunch of pictures of our cats. So I took some photos of the cats in live mode and filled the frames later. It's been about 5 years since I last did this manifestation process and tried to create my own apartment in The Sims, and I honestly forgot just how difficult and frustrating it can be. You can get really creative with what you do to make your own apartment and put all of your belongings in there, but when you have to make do with what's available, it does get a little frustrating. This little section that I'm working on is my ancestor altar in real life. We have a couple different phone alcoves in our apartment that I have turned into altars. This one in my dining room is where I have an altar to my grandmother. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but they're little cubby holes that would have held like a rotary phone 100 years ago, but I have, altar spaces in them. There's another one in the living room that I do a little bit differently, but for this one, I just used a wall shelf and alt-placed a candle and a photo and this wall plant and this painting that is kind of representative of what's there in real life. Now I am finally moving on to the living room, which is a relief because I got really frustrated with the kitchen and dining room, which is in fact representative of real life. I can't stand my kitchen. It was cute and quaint when I first moved in, and now it gives me nightmares. But anyway, honestly, that's actually a really good thing to take note of, because when you are manifesting with The Sims, yes, it's easy to focus on the building itself, the apartment itself, the house itself, but you also need to take into account things like difficult neighbors and issues with plumbing, leaking, all of those things that are now possible to kind of play with in The Sims with packs like For Rent and City Living. And these are things I did not take into account in the past when manifesting with The Sims. But now that I am older and wiser, I give myself lot challenges. I make sure there are no lot challenges. I make sure that the people living around my new place are nice and cool and chill. This particular wall in my real apartment is like a media wall. It's where our record player, our records, our TV, our DVDs, everything are. These shelves, these kind of industrial shelving units, are from the new restoration kit, garage restore kit. I almost said restoration hardware. That's a store. But I alt-placed some crates of records on the one on the left. We do have records on both of these shelves in real life. And then on top of the one on the right, I put the ashes and one of those little memorial frames of our cat who is deceased. He died last year. His name is Yeti, but the cool thing about having him in The Sims is that he can still live in our household as a ghost, which we love. And if you didn't know, if you have a ghost pet, you can send them to fetch you gifts from the netherworld if you have life and death, which is so cute. They come back with a little present in their mouths from a portal in the ground. I've gotten a couple of postcards, a couple of random collectibles. It's been kind of fun to play with, and honestly helps me cope a little bit with the grief of having a, pet that's no longer with me. This little entry section is not entirely accurate to real life. There aren't windows there because that's just the hallway in our apartment. There's actually a closet next to this fake fireplace in real life, which I could have built into this, Sims version, but I don't know. I didn't want to spend extra time or money on space that wasn't really functional. And I do actually end up changing this wall a few times because, again, I do shrink the building as a whole because I realized I kind of over tiled it as far as proportions for the real life. What I'm working on right now is it is a fake fireplace in my apartment. It might have been functional at one point, but it's not anymore. And it is where I have my altar to the goddess Bridget. I kept it pretty simple just because cluttering up a mantle place when you have to alt place everything can be a little frustrating. But I just put a couple of candles. I put a vase of flowers. In real life, there's another one of those phone cubbies above the fake fireplace in my apartment where I have the candle, where I have a little statue of Bridget. So I just sized down one of those lawn statues. I think that one's from vampires. I could be making that up. And placed it in this kind of fake alcove wall hanging that just happened to work out really well. So that is my Bridget altar represented in The Sims. I am a big rug person in real life and in The Sims, so figuring out how I wanted to do the massive rug in my living room, I ended up going with this one from Life and Death. Also, putting blinds on all the windows was a little frustrating just because I couldn't get them to slot right. These windows are from, I think, Discover University, and they wouldn't slot the blinds, the curtains, whatever I wanted to put on, they wouldn't slot correctly. So that was a little frustrating, but we got it done with some zooming in, some alt placing, and some patience. And I'm actually really frustrated because I somehow managed to not record the whole creation of this gallery wall. I am a big gallery wall person. I have this huge one behind my TV in real life. There's another one in my office that you will see later. And you might have noticed that I did, in fact, put swords on that gallery wall. In real life, between one of those record shelves and my bookshelf, I have a prop replica of the sword Narsil from Lord of the Rings, which is Aragorn's sword. And in my office, there is yet another one, but we'll get there when we get to it. I do kind of jump around a little bit between all of the rooms, but especially the room that I'm working in as I'm looking for one thing, find something that could go somewhere else, going back and forth. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. I'm finishing decorating this little entry table that we have. I opted for this coat rack instead of a closet, decided to put more empty frames to fill in with pictures of our cats, even though that's not really what's there in real life. And then that's pretty much the living room done. We don't have an overhead light in our living room, so I didn't put one, but of course that makes it really dark in here. So I put some fairy lights on the wall. I do have a couple different like neon signs on that gallery wall in real life. Put some candles up, another candle on the end table here. I do have a lot of candles, but I don't usually light them in that room. We don't have a burglar alarm in real life, but I did decide to put one there because this is The Sims and I would rather not have Robin come and steal all of my belongings. But hey, also pro tip, if your sim is a spellcaster, as soon as the burglar arrives on your lot, just have your sim go cast Deliriate on them or, one of those types of spells, and they will stop in their tracks and then eventually just leave, which is great. We love that. Unless, of course, you like getting burgled for gameplay, storytelling reasons. Of course, do your thing. I always really kind of struggle with bathroom clutter just because, again, it's spending a lot of simoleons on things that your Sims will never use. And especially when I'm doing something that's close to real life, I feel like I want to savor every simoleon spent. But I did cheat myself some dollars as I was building so that I could, again, get my apartment as close to real life as possible. But every simoleon still kind of hurt. I won't lie. And you can see me in The Sims standing in the bathroom there. I had to bring myself in to make sure everything was functional. But moving on to my bedroom, this is the only room that I kind of idealized a little bit because in real life we have mismatched headstands, we have a really crappy rug that needs replaced, we have a dresser that's falling apart, but I'm getting a new one this weekend, so I just got some matching nightstands for my dresser. We also don't have curtains on both windows in our bedroom because we're weirdos, so we have blinds on one and curtains on the other, and that's just because on one of the windows we usually have a window air conditioner in there, so the curtain was a whole thing, but I made it a little bit more nicer than it is in real life, and I feel okay about that. It looks like I put two of the exact same print above my bed, and I did, but they're in different colors because in real life we have like a duo of matching prints above the bed. The steamer trunk that I use is from Life and Death, and yes, in real life, I do have a giant blue steamer trunk at the edge of my bedroom that we use for storage, and I once again opted out of putting an actual closet and just used a clothing rack to represent where our closet actually is. Last, but certainly not least, we come into my office space. My office is honestly such a weird hodgepodge of things because it's my office, it's where I do tarot readings, it's where I do my own magic practice, it's where my partner has all of his guitars and amps and music stuff that he's into, and that is fairly accurately represented in this build. I do, yes, have my desk shoved up against a bookshelf in real life. That's where I'm sitting right at this moment. I used a table instead of a desk so that I could have the chair slot to the end so that it would actually be functional. And then I have a secretary desk that I use as an altar. It's my working altar. It's where I do most of my personal tarot readings, most of my personal spells. So that is behind my actual desk where I sit to do work. This is my partner's side of the room. Yes, I gave him multiple very expensive guitars that you have to unlock with cheats, but he has multiple expensive guitars in real life, so there you have it. I'm just filling in this secretary desk that represents my altar with clutter, so it's not actually going to be functional, but it is representative of what it looks like IRL. Same with this chair that I put off to the side. We do have another rolling desk chair that usually my partner uses to sit on while he's fiddling with all of his different guitar pedals, but I also use it at the secretary desk. But since I didn't need it to be functional, I just shoved it off to the side like it usually is when not in use. This little bookshelf end table is where I have an altar to Freya I keep saying in real life, but I mean, it's true, it's in real life. So I just put some candles and a stack of books there for now, and now I'm filling in my office gallery wall. Once again, I will be putting some swords behind me in real life. Oh my god, how many times have I said in real life? I should put a counter up or something. But I have a prop replica of Sting, also from Lord of the Rings, that you might have seen in the intro to this video. I actually have another chair and end table and little reading spot over by that window, but that's where I opted to put the cauldron since I didn't need another spot to read for my Sims, but I did need a cauldron for my spellcaster to, brew my potions, do some experimenting, make a giant batch of mac and cheese, etc. I'm going to be so honest, by this point in the build, I was so done with detailed cluttering, which is something I love to do, but then the longer I'm working on a build, the less patience I have for alt placing and messing with slotting and everything like that. So I just made sure there were lots of books, that there were candles, that I snuck a little tarot deck in on what represents my desk, and then just putting in a few final finishing touches. And that's it. And this is the very ugly outside that I told you was ugly, and I promise I'm better than this. Coming in, we see the living room, we see the lights on, we see the final gallery wall, zooming in here on this little shrine to my cats, the entryway, the altar. Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty happy with the outcome. It does feel very accurate to my real apartment, even though I had to do some pretty interesting and creative alt placing cheats, all that kind of stuff to get it to be representative of what it actually is. I did think about including some pictures of my actual apartment, but then I remembered that this is the internet and I don't necessarily want anyone to try to dox me. So you'll just have to trust and believe that I did a really good job. And this is, in fact, what my apartment looks like. So unintentional home tour that people have asked for and I have never yet delivered. So there you have it. That is my apartment in The Sims. I didn't go into the little extra building that I made to teach, mediumship classes and stuff like that. It's very simple. It just has the bare minimum for what you need. Some seance tables, the lecture board. I did, of course, decorate it a little bit with some rugs, some wall hangings, all that good stuff. But the most important step in the process was creating my actual apartment as it actually is. And now you can see, here's my secretary desk, here's my sword, here's my little altar space. So it's all real, baby. I did a really good job, if I do say so myself. So what comes next in the process is actually building the home that I want to work toward. And when I do that, I do a little bit more actual ritual to it. I cast my circle, I light a candle, I set an intention, I use a sigil, I anoint my computer. It's a whole thing. So next time you see me, I will go through that process a little bit, not showing you every detail, but giving you enough guidelines so that you can try it for yourself. And then we'll build my dream house. I don't know if I'm actually going to show too much of the gameplay of this because it's not going to be the most exciting thing in the world, but then again, maybe it will be. So if you stayed and you watched, thank you. This is my first time posting a Sims video and I'm kind of nervous about it and I feel kind of weird about it, but hopefully it was at least a little bit entertaining. And if you want to see more of the manifestation process and then probably more witchy Sims content, then go ahead and subscribe. That is all, and I will see you next time.